Hey guys, it's your boy Demigod Q, and it looks like we are in for another episode of Q Makes a Sound Good. But first, make sure you check out the hard body video, check out the vlog, check out all of Goose and JP's talks, check out some of my old Makes a Sound Good videos for some tutorials you might find useful. We've got all this content. We're putting videos out daily, and it is all for you guys. Thank you so much. But back to the topic at hand. We are going to be reviewing one of my favorite synthesizers I picked up last year. If you saw my top 5 video, you might know what's coming. It's not the Automaton. It is the MB33. I just can't find videos of it sounding good. Now, it's a 303 clone, so you'd think there would be, but I guess maybe it's not popular, or the guys that have it don't realize it, but for one reason or another, I would love to contribute that to the internet. So today we'll be doing a little video on all the different sounds the synth can make, as well as some tricks on arpeggiating to kind of make it easier to add some randomization to your bass lines or your arp chord progressions. But first, I am going to hit the gym, but when I get back, I will absolutely finish recording this video. All right, cue out. And we are back. So first, let's talk about our setup. If you have one of these units, you'll see that behind it, there's a little 4 number thing that you can change the number of. That's actually the MIDI channel, so you can adjust what channel this receives for input. There's also an instrument out, so I have that running out into my interface using external instrument, which you'll see here, and some stuff I'll be explaining in a little bit. Channel 1, input, I have it set to 0 latency. I don't receive any from this unit. All right, so let's talk about the sounds a little bit. I'm gonna turn off the arpeggiator so I can demo. As a 303 clone, it's got its saw wave, square wave, and everything in between. You may notice that as we go from saw to square, you kind of lose the lowest fundamental. I guess they're canceling out, but that can be interesting if you're trying to do like a lead line or something a little bit less intense, or just less low in general. It almost kind of extends the octave, kind of, if you think about it that way. All right, cool. We move past that. It does have a tuner. This is an old unit, so it is not constantly self-tuning like your new Korg, like monologues or whatever the case may be. It does have an auto tune. I see on some forums people not really understanding what it does. In my personal experience, when I turn this on, it definitely drifts after like an hour or so. I kind of leave mine on indefinitely, and because of that, it doesn't really drift. That said, I am still paranoid, so I auto-tuned before starting this video. Moving on, here we've got that was our voltage-controlled oscillator. This is our voltage-controlled filter. Got our cutoff, our resonance, our envelope mod, a accent, which goes between the external input, the amplitude, or from the MIDI input of how hard you press the key, like and then of course the envelope's K. So let's go through this one by one. I'm gonna get an ARP going so we can talk about these features. All right, cool. So we've got our cutoff, which of course opens up. It's a low pass that just kind of opens up. The resonance, which is going to give you a peak on where that filter is cutting off at. You can see it's starting to sound a little bit more like vintagey when it gets up there. Something about these synthesizers, and it's not something wrong with them, it's just how they are. When you mess with the resonance on these, you actually lose amplitude, and because there's no gain circuit built into the filter. So you'll hear it pretty obviously when I do this. Let me bring in that arpeggio. So it just kind of sounds more like squidgely, and then you bring it all the way down, and you get that fat low end and a slight boost in volume for sure. That's a characteristic of this synth, and as I understand it, the 303 worked similarly. Moving on, we've got our decay. So these three kind of work together to give you how quickly that little warble cuts off. So if you're doing like a real fast acid line, or you're going for like a real thumpy, like Mike Dean synth style, like rumble bass line, that's where you're gonna get those differences. So if I just press a note here, see if I do this. Versus. Or. So the envelope mod is kind of dictating how far it's going to move, not how fast it goes or how intense the resonance is, just like the distance it's going from one to the other. It's almost like you'll see an initial start, an INT on some synths. I kind of liken it to that. If I'm wrong, say something in the comments. Let's get it back to kind of where I had it. So right around there, you kind of get that more modern sounding thump. If you want something more, this kind of sounds more future funk to me with the square sounds. Just another timbre to work with. All right, now I'm gonna shut up and play this arpeggio and just kind of explore the sounds of this unit a little bit. I feel like by the time I'm done with this, you'll pretty much have an idea of the kind of sounds this can get, at least before you start adding effects or anything. So now that we've explored this unit a little bit, let's talk about some cool ARP techniques. But before I move into those, I wanted to talk to you guys about a very common trick that people use on 303s to make them sound more modern. This was all over music in the 90s, and to this day, anytime these synths are pulled out for a track, I feel like this is being used. So check this out. Got a little ARP here, right? Sounds pretty typical old school, like 60s, 70s. Put a cool distortion on it and it absolutely will elevate it. If that distortion has some stereo character to it, even better. I don't believe this one does. But check this out. So remember when I was driving the resonance and the cutoff and it kind of started to sound a little corny? So you... I mean, it's definitely not done, but that's certainly more modern sounding, I feel. All right, let's move on to our ARP tutorial. I want to give you guys a little like side tutorial on how to do some really cool randomizations and kind of, you can just kind of throw some chords in there, let the computer do some of the work for you and get an ARP or even a bass line or however you plan on using it with just a little bit of variance in it. So you're not like constantly programming every little nuance. Sometimes that can get tedious, especially if it's just, you just don't want to do it. Anyway, all right, so look into the screen here. We've got our arpeggiator and we've got it set to just up, straight, low rate, the gate. Put the gate over 100 on this unit, it actually will not ARP anymore. It'll just kind of fade out. All right, so we got this randomizer. I got it set to round robin behavior. It's going to alter the note up to 7 degrees in either direction. There's a 29% chance of that. So let's check it out. All right, so you see how it just went up a little bit? Now, this song is clearly in C minor with a raised fifth and turnaround. So I've got this. These are all Ableton plugins, by the way. C minor MIDI scale. It's we've got the literally called the scale and random MIDI effects for Ableton. So now that we've got that, you'll see every time it changes. Just those little tweaks there, pretty cool. I've also got on channel 2 the MIDI receiving the input of all those variances. So when you're working on a song, you can't This is cool for live, maybe you can mess with the variances and stuff, but if you're producing a track, you don't want to not know what your bass line is going to be every time it plays. That's insane. What you can do is create these little recipes here, record back, and then get your little cool baked bass line. But I'm not going to stop here. I've got a velocity, and I've currently got the LFO MIDI, which is a Max for Live plugin MIDI effect. And I've got it mapped to the velocity. Remember how I talked about the accent and how that's dictated on how strong the input is? I've got it set up now where on the 1, it's giving you a slightly stronger input, and that's pretty effective on this because it's a triplet line. So without a kick or anything, for some people, the 1 might get lost. And it's always good to imply that 4 on the floor in electronic style music, as this ARP is implying. Now, you take all this cool stuff, you bake it into the MIDI here, which I'll demonstrate here. And you'll see you've got the velocities tracking, and then as soon as we get a little variance, there we go. So that's all tracking right in there. And we don't need to hear that because I already baked one already. Everything's in there. Pick my own little bass line, and then of course you would turn off your MIDI effects rack. Play it back. Now you've got that pulse, you've got the randomization, all of that right in there. And you can do this with anything. You can even try applying this to like drum beats or chord progressions. The LFO MIDI is very cool. Like the possibilities for that go crazy, especially if you start mapping it to outboard gear in a live setting. That can get very powerful. Alright guys, that concludes our little miniature ARP tutorial / MB33 sound review. I hope if anyone's looking into this unit, I hope you get it. It's totally changed my production life. It's not that expensive, and you get a great, authentic, old school tone, and you can apply it in a modern context. What did you think? Does this sound like trash to you still? Or does it got you thinking about getting it? Alright, take care guys. Q out.